Oh, I'm recording already. Okay. Hi, I'm Lucian. I take photographs above and below the water. I've got lots of videos at the moment, currently in editing. I'm going to be releasing them soon, so if that's something that interests you, consider subscribing to this channel. Today I'm going to talk you through a swim and photo session that I did recently in Murcia in Spain. And in particular, I'm going to talk about why having crystal clear water is not necessarily the be-all and end-all when it comes to taking underwater photos. I brought the camera down today on the off chance that I might take some video. I only brought a really small selection of gear, just the camera and the housing, thinking it was going to be rubbish because it's been really, the water's been not clear at all for the last 4 or 5 days. But we've come down here now, the wind's changed direction and it's kind of clear. It looks clear from the top at least. When we go underneath, we'll see. It might not be clear underneath. That's what happens sometimes, is it looks clear on the surface and then you get under and it's not clear at all. But one way to find out. That's what we're going to do now. Not long after going underwater, it became apparent that despite the promise from the surface, there was a lot of floating particulate in the water, giving it a hazy, almost misty appearance. So anybody who's spent any time in the water, snorkeling, diving, really doing anything, will be familiar with the concept of good vis or poor vis, usually expressed as the number of meters that you can see under the water. And there's a good reason for that, because having a really clear visibility and going for a swim in it is a wondrous thing. It's a joy when you're going for a swim with clear visibility. But from the perspective of underwater photography, having crystal clear water is not necessarily what you need to make a great underwater photo. It can be a great thing for underwater photography, but it's not necessary for it. Now, if you think about landscape photography, and in particular when landscape photography uses fog or mist to enhance a scene very much. For example, you might get a foreground tree that stands out far more because the fog is obscuring the background, which might be a forest or something like that, as an example. Underwater particulate, that is any kind of debris that's floating in the water, it might even be so minuscule you can't even see it, but underwater particulate has the same impact, or can have the same impact, be used in the same way that fog is used on land in landscape photography. That is, if you can isolate your subject using the natural underwater particulate in the same way that you would above the water with fog or mist, then you can isolate particularly a human subject and make it pop in a way that you possibly can't if your water is crystal clear and you've got lots of background distractions. A little update, we started the swim and it turns out the water's a little bit murky, but we're pressing on nevertheless for out here, so let's give it a go. Sun's about an hour off setting, so we get some nice side light here. We started off at 4.5, but I changed it down to 2.8 because it's actually quite dim in the water. It was going up to 800 ISO, which is a little bit more than I want at the moment. So I'm shooting at minimum shutter speed of 1/25 and f2.8. Let's see how that goes. Should be alright. Should be alright. I'm also having some issues with this mask today. It's letting in a bit of water. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, onward and upward. Hang on. Ow! 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 Right. Show how this works. I've turned rock steady off and all of those settings. See if I can get it as wide as possible. There you go. Up the center. Fantastic. Alright.
I want to take some pictures.
You take a few first and then So whether you buy into it or not, that underwater particulate, or more precisely a lack of visibility, is a good thing, may very well come down to the type of photograph that you're trying to create. If your aim is to take a photograph of underwater sea life, for example, then perhaps the more clear the water the better, because you want little to get in between yourself and what it is that you're trying to represent. You want a relatively straight shot, and so actually clarity of the water is your number one aim, and that's perfectly fine and understandable. In that context, the clearer the water the better. Likewise, if you've got a big subject or several people, for example, you need to get further away from your subject, so you've got more water between yourself and the subject, then the clarity of the water is obviously going to have more of an impact the further away from your subject that you get. So that is another situation where actually clarity of water is going to play a much bigger role than if you're right up close to your subject. However, if your aim, like mine, is to capture some of the dreamlike, ethereal, kind of unknown quantity that exists under the sea, perhaps a more artistic approach, if you like. I mean, I have no pretensions to anything, but to me that's what underwater photography is that it's an expression of that kind of ethereality in that other world under the sea. Then you may, as I do, as I did here, welcome the presence of particulate to bring out your subject, particularly human subjects, because human subjects are pretty much what I photograph when I'm under the sea. The other thing here for me is the presence of the seaweed, the green seaweed at the bottom of the ocean. It's called Posidonia in Spain, in this particular region, enhances this because it's relatively flat and featureless in the same way that background becomes flat and featureless because of that particulate. And let's face it, we don't often have a choice as to the water that we're going to be swimming in. We can't control the weather, and we can't control how much water the water is going to be stirred up before we get into it. We have to embrace the idea that we live in an imperfect world and we can't always get what we want. So you can either sit on the beach bemoaning the fact that the water is not crystal clear and kind of get a bit grumpy about that, or you can do what I do, which is to say, let's just get out there, take a few images and see what we can get. So that's the other thing. It's just basically comes down to reality. If you don't have crystal clear water, you don't have crystal clear water. Get on with it. That's something that I return to again and again on this channel. So apologies if that sounds like a repetition. I'll shut up about that now. I'm grateful to my son for being a strong swimmer and, on this day at least, a willing subject. My approach here is to let him swim, spin, dive and rise, blow bubbles and just generally horse around under the water while I framed and photographed him in those poses. I gave him minimal direction, although it should be noted I've been photographing him for his whole life, several years of that underwater, so he's pretty familiar with my approach. There are a lot more variables under the sea than there are on land, so it's important to take a lot of photographs in order to have plenty to choose from later. It's inevitable with the chance involved in this sort of image making that there are a lot which need to be discarded at the end of your swim. Another reason to love particulate in the water is that it gives the sunlight something to bounce off. So you're more likely to get shafts of sunlight or other forms of light refraction under the water when there's a bit of muck in the water than when it's crystal clear. So that's something to keep in mind when you're faced with water that's less than clear or less than ideal, if you like. Towards the end of the swim, Luca took a few images of me, and I'll spare you those. Well, okay, maybe just one, if only to illustrate the fact that fins are essential when you're photographing underwater while your hands are busy controlling the camera. On the way out of the water as the sun was setting, I made a few images of Luca above the water because I'm never one to miss an opportunity. Okay, good.
It's recording.
Alright, so that was pretty fun. I've just finished a quick photo session with Luca in the water and taken a few shots. The thing that I found I really needed to do in order to get the contrast between Luca and the water, because there's a little bit of muck in the water, was to get between, so I have the sun with the subject and me here, so I was basically shooting into the sun. That was the best way to get my subject nice and contrasty. One thing I just thought that I thought of while I was out there was avoiding getting kicked by my subject who was swimming around. Now, that's not because I don't want to be kicked, although I don't want to be kicked. But that's not the main reason. The reason is because a kick to the camera housing could displace something and let water in. So I'm really conscious of just, if someone's kicking and splashing around me, just moving out of the way so the camera housing doesn't get kicked. That's a really important one. It just came to me, I thought I'd mention that. We've almost lost our light. I don't even know if this is recording properly. As I said, didn't bring all my stuff down. We'll get back home, get them on the computer, see what they look like. I can't wait. That's my son. That's who I've just been photographing. The other thing I wanted to say was technically what I had on today. So I was using the 16 to 35mm lens, and I had it most of the time. I had it out at 16mm. I don't have a dome port. I've got a flat port, and that's mainly for convenience sake because it's much easier to transport a flat port than a dome port. That being said, I hate that expression, that being said, but that being said, all it means is I need to get a little bit further away from my subject to account for the magnification of the water. But that's fine, you know, that's absolutely fine by me. As a compromise, I'm prepared to pay. So I had the 16mm for most of the shots. I changed to 2.8 because it was getting quite dark. In fact, it's getting quite dark now. Changed to 2.8 and I had it on minimum shutter speed of 1/125th, and it was around about 640 ISO, give or take a little. Had that on auto ISO because that's easy and really doesn't make that much difference so long as you're in the right ballpark. It was going up to 800. That was a bit too much, and that's when I came down to 1/25th. Luca's eating his breakfast, just watching the video before it's even made, hot off the presses. Anyway,
What's in the egg we made?
Egg. What egg? Oh, we made an egg. Well, Luca made an egg. He cracked an egg in a in a fry pan, which was sitting in the sun because it was 38 degrees today and it was freaking hot. Much nicer now, and the egg turned into kind of plastic, didn't really cook. No one was going to eat it. I don't eat eggs anyway, but you know, I definitely wasn't going to eat that egg. That's a good way to end it. Tail of the egg, tail of two eggs. There's only one egg. Bye.